So, hello Africans. I hope you're doing good where you are. And if you're not doing good, please do fine. It is good to be fine, and it's bad not to be fine. Yes, that is what my teacher told me. You know, sometimes these teachers, they might be telling us the truth, and sometimes they might be lying to us, depending on how much they are getting paid. Yeah, sometimes teachers go extra of what they are being paid to say. And one of the things they told us were things about history. The history of Kenya, East Africa, Africa. Then we went to the history of the whole world. And from this, we went to the history of black people and the history of the first African Americans to be taken to Europe and to America. During my history classes, I came to discover a figure known as Christopher Columbus. He lied about the discovery of America. You really can't discover a land with people inside. It's not true. Yeah, it's insane. It's mind-blowing. You can't discover a country with people inside. And so we can just say that he met the Americas. However, I'm one person who believes that the first people who went to America, or the first people to discover the land without humans, were the Red Indians. And I believe they went there around 15,000 to 20,000 years ago is when they went to the Americas. America is a very interesting country. For many times we've been lied to that it is Columbus who discovered USA. No, it wasn't him. It was the Red Indians. There is also an idea that it was the black people who were the first people to go to the USA. The idea of African people who are foundational black Americans, FBA, is a term they call themselves. People who say they were not from slavery to get to America. They went to America very long time ago, even before the slavery. I've gotten lots of these comments, but now I want us to listen to the professor himself. He knows better. He has the knowledge. He's an African American. He's also going to give an insider story. Now I want us to watch what he has to say. And then, by the end of the video, I shall share with you my thoughts, where we shall also have a deep critical analysis.
Lock the doors, because what I'm about to say is going to upset some people right next here. Okay. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Exactly. I mean, never mind the question of like how you can discover a place where the inhabitants are watching you arrive from the shore. They weren't wearing pants. Is that what somebody said? I like that. So anyway, there were actually many other mariners before Columbus that discovered America as well. Decades earlier, even eons earlier, there were so many people that were coming across these islands and this continent. But it's only been in the last century that evidence has surfaced and continually grown to indicate that many of these pre-Columbian explorers might have come from Africa. So the first scientist to promote this possibility was Leo Wiener. Born in Russia, Wiener immigrated to the United States in the late 19th century on his way to British Honduras, where he planned to open a vegetarian commune. Well, when that turned out not to be the dream job he expected, he moved back to the United States and he became a professor at Harvard University, as one does. But in his time in Mesoamerica, he started noticing things. There are lots of things that led him to encounter certain discoveries that made him consider that possibly if the origins of American civilization might actually be in Africa. So he observed so many linguistic and botanical and other similarities that between 1920 and 1922, he published an extensive 3-volume piece called Africa and the Discovery of America. Now, unfortunately, this is the 1920s, so as yet, no serious archaeological evidence had been done to, or work had been done to support his botanical theories, because everyone was over raiding tombs in Egypt and things like that. Nod to Howard Carter. So he didn't have a whole lot of other stuff than the names to support him. However, he knew that other clues must exist. For example, he pointed out that Columbus himself was aware that African mariners had preceded him. In his diary of his second voyage, Columbus tells of how the natives of Hispaniola actually had given him gold-tipped metal spearheads that they said were brought by black-skinned people who had come in large boats from the south and southeast. Coincidence? I think not. No. So what's interesting about that, so upon returning to Spain, is that he actually took the spearheads and he sent them away and they had them assayed, and it turned out to be that these spearheads were covered in this metal this alloy that the inhabitants called guanin, and the metallurgists actually found out that this was an alloy of 32 parts. It was like 18 of gold, 6 of silver, 8 of copper, which, dun dun dun, matched the metal used in spearheads made in Western Africa for thousands of years, as carried by medieval African warriors, including the Mali and the Moors. The West Africans even called this metal guanine, the same name used by the natives of Hispaniola. But nothing more was said about that. Conspiracy. Well, probably because, in the interest of Spain, it was in their best interest that they didn't want to have any challenges to their discovery and the claims to the islands of the West Indies. Well, as the poem goes, or it should anyway, in 1493, Columbus stole all he could see. Yeah, so on his second voyage, which was 10 times larger than the first, Columbus went on a frantic but unsuccessful island hopping trip to find gold and spices. He carried along several natives from his newly discovered San Salvador, which the inhabitants called Guanahanvi. Another island that the natives pointed out, which was really large, and was called Soameto. Soameto. Now, Columbus continued going around whimsically renaming every island he could find. But, Leo Wiener, being the curious person and the linguist that he was, and the etymologist, he couldn't help noticing that the origin of these many place names and botanical names in Mesoamerica actually sounded distinctly like other languages in Africa, particularly Bantu and even Arabic. Wiener and numerous other botanists have also puzzled over the presence of certain plants that predated Columbus but originated in Africa. For example, the calabash bottle gourds. Now, this is a species originally from West Africa, where they were well cultivated in America before Europeans arrived. Now, even long before they existed in Indonesia or Polynesia. So, in fact, the Pacific was the last place that bottle gourds actually reached and expanded to. Pardon my covfefe. Well, if it were not for transatlantic trade, pre-Columbian times, it would be very difficult to explain how certain plants, such as the yam, the sweet potato, domesticated cotton, peanuts, and tobacco, reached both West Africa and the Americas. The spread of the plantain is particularly noteworthy because it could not remain viable if it was carried in salt water. Well, in the 1640s, a Brazilian botanist named George Margrave. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Speaking of botany, Ricola. Yeah, there we go. So thank you very much. So the Brazilian botanist George Margrave wrote that the establishment of a particular varieties of plantains in this region stands as a strong argument for ancient maritime contact between the Americas and Africa. That's bananas. B-A-B-A-N-A-S. That's right. Thank you. All right. Excuse me. All right. Yeah. Okay. So, how do these plants and languages? That's going to be good for the video. All right. Fix and pose. All right, use the cough drop. Okay, so how do these plants and languages and other cultural elements get to the Americas? Well, some believe, so what's that? Well, you're cheating. Well, some people believe that, over thousands of years, Africans migrated out of Africa and then over the Bering Strait, then down into South America, and things like that. Well, another explanation exists, and so get ready. There you go. Let it out of your system. Awesome. Africans had ships. In fact, they had four kinds of. They had unbelievable. They had a shipload of vessels, and they had away. The anchors way. So, in fact, they had 4 kinds of vessels. And Nubian pottery, this is an example of Nubian pottery with a painting on it that shows a long-hold pottery. Art! That shows either a long-hold boat or a papyrus raft or a hauled-out canoe. And then this other painting beside it is from, the first one was from 3000 BC, and this is a bird's-eye view of an oared riverboat in Chad. And it dates from 3500 BCE. Now, the Africans of Guinea also had dugout canoes hewn from these monumental trees on the coast there. In 1500, just a few years after Columbus's voyage, the Portuguese captain Pacheco Pereira wrote, "In this country can be found the largest canoes made of a single trunk. Some are so large that they hold 80 men." Now, the West Africans were known to lash 2 dugout canoes together, side by side, and no one questions the seaworthiness of a similar type of Polynesian catamarans. Well, here's a 15th century Portuguese painting of sailing canoes on the Congo estuary. The Portuguese, like Captain Pereira, had heard that African traders were visiting Brazil in the mid-1400s. So to demonstrate that mariners from West Africa could have sailed to the Americas using papyrus vessels as early as 2000 BCE, Norwegian adventurer Tor Heyerdahl actually used ancient shipbuilding techniques in order to construct and sail the Ra 1 and the Ra 2 in 1969 and 70. And generally, some type of sailing vessel will average about 100 miles per day, even without sails. And in an ocean current, something like a raft or a reed boat can average about 60 miles a day. Now, Islamic historian Amir Hajib reported that voyages west from Mali were happening in the year 1311, just 150 years before Columbus. Now, when he asked the Mali emperor, shown here, incidentally, holding a globe of the world made of solid gold, asked him, well, tell me about this rumor about Atlantic travel. And he said that his predecessor had commissioned an expedition with 200 ships filled with men and a similar number with gold and water and enough provisions for 2 years. And he said, go out and find something. And if you don't come back, so you find something or you run out of food. And unfortunately, only one ship returned, and the captains told the emperor that we sailed for a very long time until we met with what seemed like a river with a strong current flowing in the open sea. I was the last ship, and I turned where I was and did not enter the current. The others disappeared. I do not know what became of them. So, well, this story seems to describe the trade wind-driven equatorial current, or the Canary Current. Now, I apologize if anyone has any cats on their lap at the moment, but so we basically have two rivers, two circular rivers in the ocean here, and you can see it's very easy for Africans from the south and the Angola regions to come up towards the equator and going westwards, or from the western coast of Africa north of the equator to go eastwards along that same current. But you know, this Mercator projection doesn't really, in terms of cartography, boo Mercator. It really doesn't do it justice. So let me just, I did this little animation for you to show that they could have taken the Canary Current up and around, and then they go over they fall off the edge of the earth, and then they come back and they make landfall back again in Cape Verde. So it is definitely possible. So I definitely had to do that. Now, at least a dozen explorers, including Constantine Ravenous, reported seeing blacks upon reaching the New World. In fact, in 1513, Spanish explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who you might know because people named a very popular dance after him. Anyway, so when Balboa was there, he said he met members of a tribe of Ethiopians in Panama. And according to Balboa's log, these men came from a totally black village that was 2 days' journey away. And he figured that these blacks had come from Ethiopia at a much earlier date. So there are also examples of physical evidence, including pre-Columbian African skeletons, which have been found throughout the Americas. Now, dating between 800 BCE and 300 CE, these murals are from the Temple of the Warriors at Chichen Itza. Now, they clearly feature, the color version is easier to see, but they clearly feature three races. And it's depicting black and Indian allies and a battle against white invaders. Now, because of their long blonde hair jewelry, a skin-hulled boat that we have here, right there, and also the fact that they're fighting naked, which was common for warriors from Ireland, they believe that these are Celtic warriors. And because this mural shows that blacks are clearly fighting on the side of the Mayans, that they must have been integrated into society much longer before this painting was done in order to form that form of alliance. Now, there are numerous pre-Columbian figurines with striking similarities to ancient African artwork, and they've been found in Central and South America. In southeastern Mexico, there are 18 rock statues of heads up to 11 feet tall that are facing the ocean looking east. Now, archaeologists call them the Olmec colossal heads after the people that carved them. And they were produced for 50 to 200 years and date from at least 900 BCE when they were mysteriously buried for some reason. So now think about it. It took enormous effort to quarry these. The smallest one was 6 tons, so 6 to 50-ton blocks, to quarry them and carry them 75 miles away from the quarry, and then carve them, and then erect them. These people that they modeled them after must have been important. Whoever they were, they must have been important to be remembered or obeyed or worshipped. Well, Jose Meglier Serrano, the archaeologist who first uncovered them, he pointed out that facial features look amazingly like African blacks, and they all display distinctive headgear or protective helmets. Now, however, some people think that these are actually the facial figures of overweight babies. Yeah, I think they needed to wear helmets when they were babies, if they think that. So, yeah. And then still others find it easier to believe that instead of Africans, those depicted or responsible for these sculptures, and as well as the Mesoamerican pyramids, were not African Americans, but dun dun dun. So why is it that so many people have never heard of this alternative of American discovery by the continent's nearest neighbors to the east? Racism! So, I mean, look. Now, the thing, exactly. Whoa, where'd all the continents go? So, this is... Look at how close this is. I mean, white people don't think that you could go this is closer compared to more than twice the distance that Columbus sailed. This will win a drink for you in a bar game sometime. Which state is closest to Africa? Maine. Yeah, look. See there, you got to need a globe for this. Look at that. You know, versus yeah, geometry, science. There you go. So anyway, so very few Americans know this, and why is this? So having examined textbooks throughout for years up until 2018, James W. Lowen says that although some books cite the alternative possibility that Vikings, Norse, or even Irish may have reached America first, not one textbook, old or new, mentions the West Africans. So whether or not you give any credence to this admittedly controversial Afrocentric theory, it's obvious that Columbus was not the first to discover America, but the last. So why did he make such an indelible mark on Western people's minds? Well, conquest may have a lot to do with it. Right, Eurocentrism. And also unlike the mundanity of perhaps thousands of years of peaceful African transatlantic trade, the quest for gold and world domination makes a much better story. And, the good Queen Isabella was so proud of her fella that she immediately equipped Columbus with 17 ships, 1,500 men, 200 cannons, crossbows, cavalry, and even 20 attack dogs for a second voyage. And another, and another. The story of Columbus remains the most widely accepted version of American discovery, most likely because it was the most recent, the most well-armed, the most documented, and the most similar in appearance to the authors of American textbooks. And one other thing that should be pointed out here is that in the years after Columbus discovered America, in 400 years, 20 million Africans were stripped from the coast of Africa, half of them dying in transit for slavery, who knows how many fleeing inland. And at the same time, within 5 years of Columbus's arrival in the New World, 90% of the indigenous population had died from disease or murder, 90%. So the fact is, that leaves few people to have a written or memory or an oral history of the seafaring of their African discoverers. Historian Samuel D. Marble wrote, "As a subject for research, the possibility of African discovery of America has never been a tempting one for American historians. We choose our own history, or more accurately, we select those vistas of history that more or less kind of explain to have the promise of the greatest satisfaction for ourselves. And we have had little appetite to explore the possibility that our founding father was a black man." So nevertheless, there is considerable evidence to suggest that African mariners also participated in this great adventure, no less than Vikings, the Portuguese, Spaniards, Celts, Chinese, Polynesians, and Arabs, and others. So now I would like to raise a toast to all the discoverers of America before Columbus, wherever you may came from. May more of us discover you. Thank you.
And so, after watching this video about the discovery of America by the black people, something that the mainstream media is really opposing, there is something we need to understand as well. We need to discover the deep truth and the deep history of America. America has been a very big country that has raised a lot of controversy along the centuries, along the path of time. Something that might blow your mind. What I'm about to tell you is something that it's not told to you by the mainstream media. Something that might hit differently. Remember, Sherlock Holmes said, if you want to know the truth, remove the impossible. Just remove the impossible. Whatever you are left with, that which you are left with, however improbable it might be, however unfit, and however disqualified you think it might be, that which is left after removing the impossible, that is always the truth. And that is what we are going to discover. The discovery of the Americas is often referred to as the New World. It marks a pivotal moment in human history, signifying the beginning of extensive European exploration and colonization. This event, traditionally dated to Christopher Columbus in 1492 voyage, had a profound and far-reaching consequences for both the Old and the New Worlds. You might ask yourself, what were these people? What was the Africans? What were the Red Indians? Or rather, what was Columbus doing outside there? Checking countries. What was he doing? And they had to have some motivation. There is always a motivation to everything. And here is what I discovered. Now, by the late 15th century, European nations were eager to find a new trade route to Asia. The overland to the east, such as the Silk Road, were long, dangerous, and controlled by Muslim empires that often charged high taxes on goods. European monarchies were also keen to find alternative routes to access the lucrative spice route, which promised enormous wealth. Those Muslims, which were also part of the Ottoman Empire, were requiring high taxes. It was dangerous. We had bandits along the way. The Europeans were not willing to gamble over this. They sought for a spirit of adventure to seek a new route. Now, these first Europeans were the Portuguese. They had already been exploring the coast of Africa. They were seeking a sea route to Asia. However, Christopher Columbus, who is an Italian navigator who was sponsored by Spain's King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, proposed a significant approach which was different from those of the Portuguese. Remember, Columbus is an Italian. Now, Columbus had theorized that sailing west across the Atlantic would be a shorter and more direct route to Asia. This bold idea was rooted to miscalculation of the Earth's size and the distance between Europe and Asia. Columbus voyages. On August 3rd, 1492, Columbus set sail from Palos de la Frontera, Spain, which is Spain, with 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina, or the Niña in Spanish. After the voyages across the Atlantic, they were marked by dwindling supplies and growing unrest among the crew. Land was sighted on October 12th, 1492. This land was an island in the Bahamas, which Columbus named San Salvador. Believing he had reached the outskirts of Asia, Columbus continued to explore the Caribbean, visiting parts of modern Cuba and Hispaniola. Despite not finding the riches of the Indies, he returned to Spain in March 1493 as a hero, bringing with him a few small gold pieces, native plants, and several indigenous people. So Columbus captured humans and took them to the Queen as a gift. Tell me if this is not an act of slavery. In the earliest form, the purest form of slavery was started by Columbus. How do you present a human being as a gift? Now, Columbus made 3 more voyages to the New World between 1493 and 1504. Although he continued to believe that he had found a new route to Asia, his discoveries opened the door for further exploration and eventual colonization by Europeans. Consequences and impacts. First of all, we can discover that Columbus met the Americas by accident. He was trying to find a sea route to India, to Asia, because the normal trade route, which was shorter, was blocked and it was dangerous. And so him and the Queen and the King, they sought a different thing. Because they had some miscalculations, they landed somewhere opposite to where they were going. And this is why he landed in America instead of Asia. He was going to look for Indians. And that's why we have the name Red Indians. You discover. Now, the Africans themselves had their own technologies. Remember the Africans in Egypt. Africans in Egypt were smart. They were intelligent. Even without that Western education, we were already smart by ourselves. And with our smartness, we must have built voyages. We must have built ships. And these ships were able to take us places. Remember, in the past, we didn't have engines like today. In the past, people traded with nature. Nature would take people places. We didn't have tires. Animals were the ones which were used as a mode of transport. So it was nature. Nature was providing for everything. And up to today, we still have the same nature. So in the past, there were some trade winds. Let me remove the word trade. There were some winds which were coming, which were seasonal. These winds were known as the monsoon winds and the northern and the southern harmattan winds. The monsoon winds would carry them to their destination, and then there's a wind which would bring them back to their destination. I think monsoon would take them, harmattan would bring them back, depending with who is trading with who. But the thing which made them possible to trade and to traverse places were the winds. We cannot say the winds were only in Europe. The winds were also in Asia. With the same Asia and Africa, with the same winds in Africa as well, Africans were able to build yachts. They were able to build dhows. They were able to build ships. These ships had very giant curtains. And I believe that they knew the knowledge of these dhows and the knowledge of the monsoon winds, and they used these to move to places. And Africans took these ships and went all the way to the Americas. That is my speculation. I'm not 100% certain. The discovery of America by Columbus, because Columbus is the one who is known everywhere. We don't have black people discovering America on the mainstream media. No, it's hidden. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Now, the discovery of the America had immediate and long-term effects on both Europe and the indigenous population of America, if you like, the New World. In the short term, Columbus' voyages led to the establishment of Spanish colonies in the Caribbean. The Spanish crown quickly realized the potential for wealth in the New World, especially with the discovery of precious metals. For the indigenous people, the arrival of Europeans was catastrophic. Columbus and his men were not the first Europeans to reach the Americas, But their arrival marked the beginning of a sustained and systemic conquest. The Europeans brought with them diseases such as smallpox, to which native population had no immunity. The diseases disseminated indigenous communities, leading to a dramatic population decline. The subsequent Spanish conquest, led by the figures such as Hernán Cortés in Mexico and Francisco Pizarro in Peru, resulted in the collapse of powerful empires like the Aztecs and the Incas. The Spanish imposed their culture, religion, and language on the native population, leading to significant cultural transformations. We might also want to look at the legacies and historical significance of Columbus' discovery of America, the Red Indians' discovery of the Americas, and also the Black people discoveries of the Americas. This is something we should know. 3 people, not 1, 3. Now, the discovery of the Americas fundamentally changed the course of history. It paved the way to the Columbian Exchange, a massive transfer of people, animals, plants, and diseases between the old and the new worlds. This exchange had profound ecological and agricultural impact, introducing new crops such as potatoes, tomatoes, and maize to Europe, which would become staple foods in European diet. The economic impact was also immense. The wealth extracted from the Americas, particularly silver from mines in Mexico and Peru, fueled the rise of Spain as a global power in the 16th century. Also contributed to the development of the transatlantic slave trade, as Europeans sought labor for new plantations in the Americas, leading to centuries of human suffering and social disruptions. In a broader sense, the discoveries of the Americas initiated the age of European exploration and colonization, setting the stage for the modern globalized world. It fostered an era of scientific and intellectual curiosity that led to further exploration and discoveries. That's how much significant Columbus' discovery had. To some point, there is always a gray or a silver lining on every dark cloud. At least they came to discover a new land. These people were shown new things, technology, they were able to trade, they were able to get medicine. That's the silver lining. The discovery of the Americas by Christopher Columbus and the Black people and the Red Indians was a watershed moment in history, marking the beginning of a new era of exploration, colonization, and cultural exchange. While it brought immense wealth and opportunities to Europe, it also had devastating consequences for the indigenous population of the Americas. The legacy of this event is complex, encompassing both the benefits of global exchange and the discovery of the Americas is a testament of human curiosity and ambition. Or the story of the discovery of America is significant to the modern world, to the contemporary societies. Yes, Africans, Red Indians, and other people around the world went to the USA, not USA, but America. They discovered the Americas, but it was Columbus's visitation that had the greatest impact up to date. Empires such as the Aztec and the Inca, which were destroyed as a result of Columbus's invitation. Not really invitation, he invaded. Invasion of the Americas. So, thanks for watching. I hope that you find value in this video. If you do, kindly give the video a super thanks and a like. Super thanks and like. Do subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. Yes. See you in the next one.